I am Jim Collin, live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Call to Coach, recorded on July 17th, 2015. Call to Coach is a resource for those who want to help others discover and use their strengths. We have Gallup experts and independent strengths coaches share tactics, insights, and strategies to help coaches maximize the talent of individuals, teams, and organizations around the world. If you have questions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room that's available for you right below the main video window. I'd love to have you log in and interact with us during the program. We do have a recorded version available for if you missed it, or if you have questions about custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, you can send us an email. That email is just coaching@gallup.com. There is also a contact form right there on the live page that you might be on. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and StrengthsFinder training needs. You can also catch the video in both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. Many of you are doing that now, so that's really the best way to recoup the time you might be in the car, on a train, or in a plane. As you are traveling, download those to your mobile device through some kind of podcatcher, iTunes, one of those devices to get that done, and listen to them on the road. We also have free apps that are available for you. If you haven't discovered your top 5 on your iPhone or Android, just go to the App Store and search StrengthsFinder. All the links to that, one site you need to remember, coaching.gallup.com. Heather Wright is our host today. She works as a senior learning and development consultant here at Gallup, right here on the riverfront. She's here with me today. Heather, great to see you, and I'll get out of the way because obviously I'm having some trouble talking today. Great to have you on a Call to Coach.
Thank you, Jim. I think it's the heat and humidity here in Omaha is getting to you today.
I think it's just been the end of a very long week. Happy Friday to everybody.
I always say let's go out with a bang. It has been a long and busy week, but the beautiful thing about Fridays is Called to Coach, and we have a wonderful guest today on Called to Coach. I want to introduce everyone to Vicki Newell. Vicki is a certified strengths coach, and when I think about Vicki and the conversations we've had, what I hear Vicki talk about the most is how dedicated she is to helping her clients explore and discover their greatest talents and strengths. In a few minutes, you're going to hear just how passionate she is about helping her clients realize an improved quality of life. So what I've learned about Vicki recently is she's worked with lots of teams in her career. She spent many years with 3M, a great corporation that many people admire. And then following her time at 3M, Vicki was in a management role with a startup, and that startup was Opal Orthodontics. Say that 3 times fast, Jim Collison. But when Vicki was working at Opal, that's when she made her discovery of StrengthsFinder 2.0. And there was something that resonated, and I'll let Vicki tell that story, but using StrengthsFinder at Opal and then kind of the journey from there and how it made an impact with that team, Vicki's got a little bit of the entrepreneurial spirit. So not only has she taken StrengthsFinder, she's taken the EP10 assessment, and we'll talk a little bit today too about how that entrepreneurial profile helps her in her coaching and consulting with orthodontists today. So today, Vicki is an independent consultant. She owns her own organization, Systemized Orthodontics Consulting Group, and I'm just excited to help you get to know Vicki, learn a little bit about her journey and how she was called to coach, and give you all an opportunity to witness her talents in action. So welcome, Vicki. We're really delighted that you're here. I'm going to answer the question I know that someone's probably already posted in the chat room. I'm going to share your top 5 themes are maximizer, learner, self-assurance, arranger, and connectedness. So, Vicki, I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about what called you to coach.
Well, you know, I've always had an inner stirring to want to help other people. I find that when I am able to make a difference or help someone reach their true potential and just letting go of myself and just losing myself in helping someone else is where I'm most fulfilled. That's it. And so to have the opportunity both in private practice, then at 3M and with Opal, I actually feel like I've been doing it all along. I'm the oldest of 5. in the siblings, and so I was. My husband always says that I've been a lifelong mother. I was a mother all of my life. So I think that is part of it. But finding that and tapping into it, strengths, when I read Tom Rath's book, which I've read all of Tom Rath's books, but it was so revealing. It was just an eye-opener. I understood, we cannot connect the dots moving forward, only looking back. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the coolest thing ever, is to be able to, when you become aware of at least the top 5, but that's just the beginning, right? But then to understand, oh, that's why I love this or did that or think this way. And so I realize how beneficial it's been for me and how life-altering. And if I can share that with other people, it's just the most rewarding, fulfilling. I just feel so fortunate that I found Strength Finders and Gallup.
Right. So I hear your maximizer loud and clear, and I hear some connectedness kicking in, and I've heard your self-assurance over our past few conversations. Tell me a little bit, though, that maximizer. I'm curious about, in the work that you're doing right now, how you select your clients, how you choose who to work with, because, like you said, part of the joy for you, where you feel you're most fulfilled, is when you're helping people reach their full potential. So I would imagine, there's lots of orthodontists in the world. How are you filtering and getting pretty selective about the right partnerships, the right clients for you to work with, where right. your maximizer sees that they're good, but there's potential for them to be great, and know that they'll work hard and do the necessary work yes. to really kind of thrive under your guidance. Talk a little bit about that.
I'm glad you asked that question, because all orthodontists have worked very hard to reach the level of success and just to become an orthodontist. But then the successful practices, I recognize, and I told Jim yesterday when we had our conversation that I'm actually starting a list of the top 5 of the doctors that I work with, and it's really interesting what shows up, because there are common threads, but then there are very unique qualities as well. But in terms of being selective, they have to be someone that has worked very hard to get to this level, but it's never good enough. No matter how good they are, they know they can do better. So I don't have to explain that. They get that. So, an orthodontist, all orthodontists are dentists. But not all dentists are orthodontists, because these are people that want to take it to the next level and specialize. They do orthodontics exclusively. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important to understand that there's a lot more to orthodontics than a beautiful smile and straight teeth. Severe malocclusions affect, bone loss, which affect your overall health. So aesthetics, yes. Building confidence, yes. But having a healthy smile is most important. Just as important as a beautiful smile. So back to your question about being selective, there are also orthodontists that it's not required, but they take it to the next level. I know they're all maximizers, achievers. Mm-hmm. That they become ABO certified, the American Board Standards, which is above and beyond their degree and their license. They do it because they want to. It's not required.
Right, right.
That is a target audience.
And that's really kind of signals to you that they're the right kind of audience for you and for strengths.
Exactly.
Good.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about, I'm curious to hear some of your stories of impact. Tell me about a client or two where you've helped them kind of take the journey and the difference that it's made for them?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. I have so many notes here in front of me because it's hard to choose. But one of the most fulfilling things, Heather, is that developing my own team, to develop my own team and to watch them blossom and embrace the strengths coaching, because they already have the orthodontics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have, they're experts, and it's been just wonderful to be able to hand pick the brightest and the best, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then get out of the way, because, you know, they rock. They are so, I mean, and that now with the strengths, that's a whole new component for them. But when I see them embrace the strengths, for instance, I have a dear friend that she was actually one of the 6 that I coached for my certification, and she wanted more. She was like not finished with that. She goes, "Oh, I love this. Can we do another session?" So she ended up applying for a job with a company, and her number 1 is strategic. She's an activator. She's a woo. She is a maximizer as well, achiever, maximizer, woo, activator. Yeah, she developed a PowerPoint for her interview, and she had a strength slide telling, you know, I am an activator, therefore I can, whatever the requirements of the job. I have strategic and blah, blah, blah. And she went through the entire, she got the job, I think on the spot. But she was hired, and she used her strengths. So she just took the ball and ran with it. Mm-hmm. And so she called me to say, you know, how happy she was that she had gotten the job. But she worked with me to develop that slide. And so that was very rewarding to see her accomplish that.
I love that. Any others you want to tell us about?
Well, Sherry, one of my consultants, also just to watch her blossom. She is another expert. She's a registered dental hygienist. She's run a very busy, dynamic practice. And orthodontic practices are teams. It requires teamwork, and it is a very dynamic environment. And the ones that make it look easy have their systems in place. But it's fine-tuning and keeping things running smoothly. So whereas, you know, a consultant comes in, our tagline is a whole new approach. So we do the consulting, but the coaching has made all the difference. It's become the very foundation of our work, because the sooner that you can peel back the layers and tap into a person's strength to know what you have to work, or talent, and then begin developing that strength, you know, then you're going to get increased productivity. You're going to create that happier work environment. It's just amazing to watch, and so rewarding to see that develop within a team, within an orthodontic practice specifically.
So talk to me a little bit about when you go into an orthodontic practice and you're introducing strengths to them. Do you do coaching with that orthodontist first and then each individual on the staff? Do you do a team session first? Tell me a little bit about the flow of your strengths practice within that orthodontic practice.
Okay, and I'll try to you know, talk about strengths specifically, because there's a lot that goes on with the orthodontic side of our work. But everyone takes the assessment. I mean, right away, everyone has to take the strengths assessment. So I get all of that information back, and prior to ever really meeting someone, I have an idea of who I'm going to be talking to, who I'm going to be speaking with. But yes, the level 1 coaching is I do initially one-on-one. The doctor, because the doctor has to buy into the program and approve what I'm doing, and I want him to or her to understand, you know, strengths. So the level 1 coaching is introduction to, awareness of their own strengths, and I have to spend a lot of time talking about the research, because in orthodontics, everything is research-based, evidence-based.
Mm-hmm.
I think like an orthodontist, and that attributes to my success in orthodontics. And
Right.
so that's another reason I was drawn to Strength Finders, because the research is just phenomenal. So I talk about Dr. Clifton, and I talk about the terminology, and I help them understand that we're creating, this is a foreign language, but you're going to catch on really fast, and I'm going to help you, and we're going to create a whole new culture. And we've done, in creating that awareness, we have created strength boards with all of the themes, and then the people's name. Like if they're a maximizer, their name is there. And so that's in the staff room so that people always see that it's highly visible. And then I've created the little cards and laminate them, and it's like a pocket reference card that every person, has a copy. Because the first steps in creating the awareness, they're not sure about all of this and what's coming. But as it evolves, people start using the terminology, oh, Debbie has her woo on today, or, Emily, is her futuristic. She's talking about whatever's going to happen next week or so forth. And so it's really delightful to watch and to see it evolve. So the level 1 is all about creating the awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Level 2 gets a little more interesting, because level 2 is when I will bring 2 team members together, and I have each of them share their top 5 with each other. And so that's about creating the awareness of others' talents, and to recognize and appreciate the commonalities, because that's the first thing I look for.
Mm-hmm.
You and I share Maximizer. Whoever I'm working with, I first of all look for what we share, and that gives me a little more insight. Even though they may be, obviously they are unique, but it gives me a little more insight into, dealing with that person.
Right.
But I think more importantly is to recognize and appreciate the differences,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can take advantage of, if they're, none of us are good at everything. So whatever we can tap into, if we find, a challenge that we're having difficulty with, oh, Debbie can do that because she,
So in level 2, when you're deciding who the 2 that come together are, is that based on kind of the dynamics that you've learned about in your original exploration with people, thinking, oh, these 2 really have an opportunity to partner better, or these 2 work together a lot, they're on the schedule a lot together? Is that how you determine who you're doing that level 2 coaching with?
It is, and that is what is, it's just such a wonderful tool. It can bring people together so much sooner than it otherwise may or may not have ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it can be conflict resolution to people that are just not, they can't get on the same page for whatever reason, and it's constantly, because in orthodontics, you'll find oftentimes the front and the back being the clinic and the front being the business, and it's the scheduling that affects the back, and the procedure time that affects the front. And so it's just imperative that all oars are in the water, rowing in the same direction, right? Common vision, common goals. So we talk about that a lot.
So does every member of the staff in the practice go through a level 2 with at least one other person?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we're able to, in workshops and staff meetings, it just ends up being strengths-based. It just does, And the other, I'd like to talk just a little bit about the other component that I brought that has really enhanced strength is the mindfulness. And there's a wonderful book that I would highly recommend to anyone working with teams. It is Real Happiness at Work by Sharon Salzberg. And there are 8 pillars, and I always go to chapter 5 because it's communication and connectedness, which is key for every team to have effective communication, and that they're connected, that they understand one another. Then it becomes that well-oiled machine where, all oars in the water. It's beautiful when you see that evolve and happen. So, but the mindfulness, you have to be aware of, number one, what your top 5 are, what your talents are, and then be aware of when you're using them and find better ways to use them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the mindfulness is just key. It just enhances the strengths.
Very good. Talk a little bit about, I'm curious about your themes in action as a coach. Obviously your connectedness, we saw a great example of that just now, in that mindfulness conversation, and just how, if we communicate and we all understand that we're connected and a part of something bigger than ourselves, your connectedness really plays out in how you help teams become more aware of that. Talk a little bit, I want to hear you talk a little bit about your learner, your self-assurance, your arranger as a coach. Talk about your own awareness of when those kick in what parts of, is it the initiation of the relationship? Is it the actual coaching and consulting you're doing? Is it finding the clients you want to work with? Tell me a little bit about those talents in action and where you see them really being strengths that you leverage.
Well, the connectedness, it seems like that is always at play. The connectedness, it's just, with nature, with people. I love to listen to Kurt Leesfield talk about connectedness. And he had connectedness, I believe. No, he had connectedness envy, I think he said. But yeah, the connectedness is obviously the relationship building domain, and so it is key in working with, identifying and working with clients. But the maximizer, I should say, for identifying. Maximizer, I could always do better. I guess a common comment that for those close to me will say, Vicki, you're so hard on yourself. You're always so hard on yourself. Like, I know as soon as this is over, I will know I could have done better. And will do it better the next time. But then that's the learner, right? The learning. I'm always researching, trying to find, better ways. So it requires a lot of reading and research to be better. So I'm constantly trying to make it to the next level. I
love it. So what you're saying, so I think about, with even what you offer your clients, it's like, well, that's what I did with that practice, but for your practice, I've found something new, I've found something better, or I've taken what I've learned from a previous experience, and now I've got an even better model we can use going forward. Exactly. And that almost gives you, individualization doesn't come in for you till quite a bit further down the list, but it almost sounds like your maximizer and your learner continue to individualize your approach to the next practice and the practice after that and the practice yet to come.
Right. Well, strategic is number 6, and I just knew something was wrong when I saw the top 5 and strategic wasn't there. So when I got my 34, I'm like, yes, it is there. So a lot of strategy involved in just identifying clients and determining, if you can connect and deliver the results that they're looking for. The selling strengths is a lot different than selling products. It has been a challenge for me, but I will say that the resources that Gallup has provided and the materials have been wonderful and very helpful. So to take the selling skills, from my previous life, and you sort of have to find new ways of inventing yourself, right?
So I think you were
through
about to tell us about your arranger when I interjected there. So talk about your arranger and how you use that in your coaching practice.
Well, the arranger, you know, I love the dynamic environments, and orthodontics is a very dynamic environment. So, you know, it helps for me to understand why I have loved orthodontics. I always say it's the greatest place on the planet. It's the best place in the world to be. They're very intelligent, caring, giving individuals, usually very creative. They live in a world of millimeters. Okay, so I get it. Some people will think that they're very difficult to work for, but they're not. It's just the expectations are so high because they are perfectionists, and it takes a special person to work in an orthodontic practice to understand the expectations. So the strengths give them a tool to help them, you know, to be better at what they do, even if they're already good. It just takes them to another level. They tap into that talent and are happily engaged doing what they love. And there's just nothing better on the planet than that.
I have to giggle when you say there's, you know, orthodontist, you know, an orthodontics practice is just the greatest place on the planet for you to be. I have a couple of 12-year-olds in braces that wouldn't necessarily agree with you, Vicki. They're like, it hurts every time I come out of there, and we're paying them to do this to me, Mom. But no, it's a delightful practice, and I appreciate your, you know, to me it almost, I keep hearing you talk about the practice and, you know, living in a world of millimeters and that perfectionism, and even the idea that we talked about yesterday that there are almost multiple prescriptions available. When someone goes in for an orthodontic consultation, it's like, okay, we see what your issues are and we know what we need to fix. There's different prescriptions for how we can fix the issue, and just the orthodontists themselves picking like the very best prescription, the very best process of what to move and in what order and what teeth to pull, and, you know, what do we pull forward and what do we, and so I think about just even the practice itself probably appeals to the maximizer in you, because
absolutely,
there's an orthodontist every day probably looking at a mouth saying, you know, oh, could we spend, you know, another month and could it be even more perfect, or have we kind of, you know, is my work here ever done?
No, that's true. That's so true. But actually, my maximizer, my learner, my self-assurance, my arranger, my connectedness, all five. I mean, it's hard to separate one and say, well, this is why I love orthodontics, because all five are at play there.
What about self-assurance? Tell me about this, the story of what self-assurance really looks like for you.
It is an inner confidence, knowing that I am where I need to be at this given time, and to have the faith and understanding of that self-assurance. I just know. It's just very intuitive, and it's something, it's rather difficult to explain, actually, Heather, but I just know. And it's that confidence to be able to, in working with doctors, you have to develop a pretty tough skin, or a fair amount of self-confidence to be able to perform at that level consistently, day in and day out, because the bar is set very high. And then with ABO certified, or really any orthodontic practice, a good practitioner, that's their signature. When they send patients out into the world, that's their work, and that lives on. And so they are always at, you know, top peak performance at all times. And so it's really critical, you know, if you are seeking orthodontics, or for your children, we want them to have the best. And a good clinician, you really need to do your research and make sure that you found a really good orthodontist. And
well, and I love it because you know, like you said, your certification, honestly, kind of, you already had the self-assurance. You knew this was a space where you should be. And the neat thing is that being Gallup certified really fits the world that you're coaching in, doesn't it? That certification,
absolutely.
that recognition adds to your self-assurance and your confidence, but also is recognized. I think Jim has a few good questions that he wants to ask on behalf of the audience. So, Jim, what have you got for us?
Yeah, you bet. So the first one's super easy from Connie. She asks what city you're in. Vicki, where are you? Where that you work with?
I am just north of Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay, I was just over there. I was just we were in southern Ohio doing some vacationing, so I should have stopped in to see you. Ro had asked the question when Vicki began her strengths practice with clients, how did she market her services? Also, when pitching to the head of the ortho practice, what were the top benefits you conveyed to demonstrate the value proposition?
Okay.
The first part, maybe market. How did you market your services,
okay.
or how are you marketing them?
Yes, I have done, I think, a really nice job of incorporating the strengths into the orthodontics. I am fortunate that, you know, I am well established in the orthodontic profession, have a lot of connections there, and resources to tap into as well. But I set up my website, first of all, and then I did some mailers, and then just, you know, going out and meeting with orthodontists and letting them know that, because they still think of me that I'm with 3M or with Opal. And so this is a relatively new endeavor for me. I started my company in 2012. So it has really taken off. The need is definitely there.
Vicki, what do you think was the most effective when you began? You know, when we think about a coach who might be beginning their practice, and the thing they might want to think about first when they think about marketing, what do you think was the best first move that you made in getting something set up?
I would have to say the website, you know, getting a website established, and then your materials, just to make sure that you have a story. We all have a story. And so to be able to convey that, and I know you can't see my materials, but you know, I found a really good graphic artist that developed my logo, and that was a process that we went through to develop a really good professional logo.
Well, and I think you said story, right? You just said that again, story, right? You had a story to tell, which I think is super important. It's you know, it's giving the, you know, going in and saying, hey, let me tell you the story. People love to hear stories, right? And so it's you got to kind of have that down pat, polished story to be able to go in with. So when you got that story, to Ro's second part of the question, the top benefits. So when you go into there, what's the number one benefit you go in with for them? How do you play to that maximizer, you know, strength, or that idea of restorative to them when you do that, or how do you do it?
Well, the maximizer I lead with, obviously, because it's about getting to the next level. And if they have reached a plateau and, you know, they're very good at what they do, but they want to, you know, take it up to the next level. So the maximizer I always lead with is just there. It's just, but, you know, I had done as much with strengths on my own. I will say that I was training sales reps. I was working in university, and I was using the strength finders for myself, developing my own talents and understanding what I could do with the Ranger, what I could do with Maximizer. So, you know, the journey begins there, but I had exhausted all creativity and what I could do on my own, and that's when I started watching Call to Coach. Watching Call to Coach led to the course. Mm-hmm. And I will say that that was a turning point for me. I needed the validation, right? I needed my bona fides. If I'm coaching, then I need to be a certified coach. And I really need more tools so that I can, be more beneficial, to offer more to my clients. So, Gallup, I'll never forget the feeling when I walked in the room. By the third day, I was so impressed with the instructors, top notch, materials, top notch. I'm all about quality, and it reminded me of 3M, because 3M, they're an excellent company. We had wonderful continuing ed and training, and the materials were of, the first order. Everything was first class, and I can say the same of Gallup. And so, if you're not certified and you love coaching and you love the work, all of my consultants that are working with me, and there's just a handful of us at this point, but it is mandatory that they do their strength certification. Everybody will be a certified coach. And then the EP10, I can't wait. If I could come to, when is it in Chicago? I can't.
Next week.
So, I'm very anxious to take that, because that's another fantastic tool in helping the orthodontists. They know orthodontics, and they really, the running of the business, they diagnose cases and treat patients.
Mm-hmm.
Running a business is a major challenge for any orthodontist. So the EP10, I cannot wait. I already started using that tool. I told you before.
Well, and Vicki, one of the things when I was reviewing your marketing materials, one of the things that maybe in the question that Jim had asked, when you think about kind of the value proposition for potential clients, I love how you quote the statistics that a person utilizing their strengths is 6 times more likely to be engaged at work and 3 times more likely to report having that excellent quality of life. And that's part of where your passion is. I want to help people have great lives, and I want these practices to be productive and successful. And then you also quote that strengths-based teams are 12.5% more productive. And I think those maybe for some of our coaches out there are some of the research-based nuggets that say, hey, you want to get your team to be that much more productive than other teams, whether it's orthodontics or whatever the industry. Do you want your employees to be more engaged? Do you want to give people the opportunity when they show up to work every day a better life? Then strengths coaching is a pathway to that.
Absolutely.
So that stands out to me. Can you tell I have communication in my top 5? That's where I think your value proposition shines through in your marketing materials. You've done a good job of kind of packaging that right in the first paragraph of some of your marketing pieces.
It is.
So it kind of grabs people. Yeah, I want to be more productive. Yes, I want my employees to be happier and have a great life,
Yes.
How could I say no to that? So.
Yeah.
You guys mentioned the coaching courses. Of course, those are available at the Gallup Strength Center. So just GallupStrengthsCenter.com if you want to get a list of all those. You might be listening to this well after July of 2015, and we keep those all up to date. So if you want to pop out there and get a list of those are available as well. Let me move on because we got some good questions to ask here. Let's see if we can blow through the row. I'll also ask the question, what are some of the challenges or objections in selling strengths that you've had since you've been doing this, and how have you overcome them? Maybe pick one where you had a strong objection and you overcame it.
Okay. I have had people say, well, they'll see their top 5 and they don't understand why it says that they are, say, futuristic. That isn't something I would have ever thought was, what is that? I don't. So, then the conversation has to evolve to, well, let's talk about futuristic. Let's talk about, what that is. So then we'll go back through, because I always have them print out the reports and highlight what resonates. So we go back and we do that again, and invariably they'll go, wow, yeah, that's true. That is me. I've yet to have a person not come around and say, that's me, always. And so the research is validated in my mind over and over again. And I did it myself. I was looking for strategic. It wasn't in my top 5. So I understand how they feel, but it is somewhat of a foreign language. And so until they, learn to understand what this all means, and that's my job as a coach, to help them understand and find that place where they can identify yes, that's me.
Mm-hmm.
Keith asks a question. He says, if you were to pick an engagement framework, how long would it take you to be fully engaged or integrated in, with a customer? What do you think that, and you've been just doing this since 2012, but what do you think that sweet spot time is? Sometimes we think these engagements can be done in a week or two, right? People are impatient, right? What do you think? What's the sweet spot in timing for you, like where they're fully engaged and fully up to speed on it?
I would say fully engaged at 6 months. I think at the 6 month, and depending on the size of the team that you're working with, um, in some people individually, it doesn't take nearly as long if they do the reading, do the assignments, and my clients do have assignments. My learner, I have a curriculum, so there's required mandatory reading, right? And now I love Theme Thursday because that's a great assignment for clients. It's like, so go to YouTube, find Theme Thursday, and then find your top 5. And I need for you to spend time with that so that you can see another person that has woo and how they use that. And the other thing that people absolutely love is the uniqueness. So it's not a cookie cutter approach, just like my consulting is not a cookie cutter approach. It's very individualized, it's very customized. So your report is going to read differently than mine, and I've done that. I've had my report, and I'll say, okay, here's my learner, and I read it, they read their learner, no 2 sentences are the same. So I love that, and people, I think, accept and see validation when they read that because it's based on their answers to the assessment, and so it is uniquely them. Even though it's learner, and there's going to be a lot of commonalities, there's unique differences as well.
Good.
Vicki, I'll point this question to you, but Heather, I want you to jump in a little bit because I think it's common for a lot of coaches, and you're out there working with them a lot. What do we suggest to keep the strengths front of mind when we think, it's one thing to go into organizations and get a strengths engagement started. And a lot of excitement, and people do it, and then, days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and other things become priorities. Vicki, let me start with you. What kind of things have you been doing to keep it top of mind? And then Heather, we'll throw it over to you to say, what have we seen as best practice?
Well, the ongoing coaching and the awareness of, sometimes I'll just, to the people that I'm working with, I'll send a little quote that pertains to, one of their top 5, or just check in, and there's some really cool, out on Yammer, a lot of coaches share different ideas and practices, and you can find some really cool things to do, and I may send just a little assignment, like showing your strengths was one, and then to get that back. But it does take an enormous amount of work on the coach's part to bring people along. Finally, there's a point, it reminds me, Jim, of I can remember when I first learned to ride a 2-wheel bike, and my uncle was holding the back fender, and I'm pedaling, and I'm anxious, and I'm excited, and at some point I looked over my shoulder, and he had let go. I was riding. It was exhilarating. It was just, and that's what happens with strengths. It's like you don't have to push and pull, because it pulls them. They realize the benefits they're getting, and they need it. Like because you're a developer, and your communication is constantly evolving and improving, and you're finding new ways to use that for the betterment of not just yourself, but for all those around you.
And I always find, Jim, that it's almost as though, what gets them to allow you to let go of the seat and ride on their own is there's kind of 2 basic things that I kind of encourage managers or leaders to implement in their day-to-day conversations. The more you can kind of weave strengths into the day-to-day conversations. And so there's 2 places I highly encourage it. The first is when you're assigning the work, when you're talking about who's going to do what today, or we've got a new project, or we've got a new client, a new patient. It's, here's the situation, now who's going to take what role, what's on this work that our team is about to do. And when you start talking about the work that needs to be done, and Heather's going to take this piece because of her communication and her individualization, and Jim's going to take this piece because he's got developer, and Vicki's going to take this piece because she's got the learner, and the strategic's pretty high too. And so when we start to assign roles and responsibilities or step up for tasks because of certain strengths, I think that gets it to be, and I try to encourage people to be very diligent about kind of their daily application of that. So when you have a staff meeting, talk about who's doing what and why. What strength are they going to be deploying? The other piece is when we reflect on our successes. Anytime we've had a great day or someone did something exceptional or we're giving some recognition, I always ask managers and leaders to tie that back to recognition. So, tie it back to strengths. So, Jim, you just completed this fantastic internship program. Here are the strengths I saw you using and exhibiting in the way you set up great events for them to learn from, exposure for that. So that I'm talking about you and your strengths relative to the success you've just had, because that reinforces the language, it reinforces the awareness and the impact of those strengths. And so those are kind of everyday conversations that people are having with their teams already, and it's an easy way for strengths to become a part of the vocabulary within those conversations.
Well, that's why the level 2 coaching is so critical, because that's where it all begins. So I know mine. Now you begin to, branch out and to recognize each other's and appreciate. One little thing I wanted to be sure to add is that I did work to develop a whole new review process, because the review process that was in place oftentimes in this one practice in particular, they would feel punitive, like it was punitive if they were under the gun, what they were not doing. So we were focusing on weaknesses, right? You're not doing this so well, this needs to be improved. So I thought about that, and so we came up with the employee contribution and development plan. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but on one side of the document there are 5 spaces, and the staff person they list their top 5, and then directly across from that are 3 goals. Okay, so what the idea is that they have 3 goals, and those 3 goals have to align with the practice, the goals for the practice. So whatever the vision and goal is that the doctor has set forth for the practice, each team member has to set 3 goals. So maybe they need to improve their procedure time, maybe they need to, whatever it is that they need to improve, what their goal is going to be. Then they go over to the top 5 strengths, and then we talk about, which of those top 5 do you think that you would be able to use to, achieve that goal. And so it becomes very proactive, focusing on what they do well, that they can do better, and it just turns the entire process around, and it's such a positive effect.
Well, and I love it, Vicki, because it allows people to feel like my strengths are valued and appreciated and applied, and it gives them some conscious intentionality about using their strengths going forward. I need some feedback about when I've made a mistake, but boy, if my review and that conversation is always about alignment of goals, my strengths can be applied to those goals, that's always a more productive conversation.
Yes.
I think we've got one more question before we have to wrap here.
We do, and one more quick tip, to keep it top of mind, we've got Android and iPhone apps that are available. You can download those, log into them, keep your top 5 in front of you on your phone. I always recommend people make that their lock screen. The average person unlocks their phone 63 times a day, and so by the time you've seen it there for a week, you're pretty much keeping that in front of you. So just a very practical recommendation from that. One more quick question. One of the guests asked, describe how your company is unique from other consulting companies. I'm going to say, describe that in 30 seconds or less. What is your quick elevator speech when people come to you and say, what do you do? What's the 30-second elevator speech? What do you tell them?
Okay, so we do have a whole new approach. We are much more than orthodontics. We are orthodontics, but we are about people, developing people's talents so that they can be happily engaged doing what they do every day.
Yeah, there you go. That's perfect.
Woo. Is that okay?
Nicely done.
Beautiful.
Nicely done. Heather, I'll throw it back to you as we bring it in for later.
You know, what I appreciate so much about Vicki is her dedication and her passion around helping people perform and be fulfilled in their performance. And what struck me about Vicki was, you know, you heard her mention today walking in the doors of Gallup and feeling like she was at home. And really, Vicki, what has shown through in today and just even leading up to today is you've really found your career home in this coaching and consulting in a strengths-based way. You know, you didn't start out taking the course. You started out using strengths, using an assessment, using that tool, and kind of finding your own way, and then found the value in the certification around that. But you knew that you were called to coach from the very beginning, and so very excited to see how you've used that calling and just keep building it, not only for yourself, but as an opportunity for other people to find their calling and to find their career home. So thank you for being a wonderful guest and giving people a different perspective on the application of coaching.
Well, thank you so much, Heather and Jim. It's been my privilege to be here. And I did find a quote pertaining to strengths that I absolutely love. You've probably heard it. The meaning of life is to find your talent. The purpose of life is to give it away.
That's a great quote to wrap it up with. And well, Vicki, thank you for coming on. I'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available at the Gallup Strengths Center, just GallupStrengthsCenter.com. I mentioned that's where you can get your top 5 if you haven't done that yet. We also have a link to our coaching courses, our coaches directories out there as well. We mentioned the EP10, the Entrepreneurial Profile 10. If you want to take advantage of that, that is available there. All that information's out there, GallupStrengthsCenter.com. Send us your questions or comments. You can send that in an email, coaching@gallup.com. You can also catch the recorded audio and video of this show and all the past ones as well. It's available. The links to our Facebook, YouTube page. Anything we mention is going to be at our coaching blog, coaching.gallup.com. We're doing a big push for meetups around the country, and we've got well over 25 now. I think we're reaching 30 at this point. We'd like to do 100 by the end of the year. Head out to the coaches blog, again, coaching.gallup.com. Look for the meetup tab, and you can see if one's in your city. If it's not, maybe you should start one. And don't forget, we have those Android and iPhone apps available as well. They are free in those stores. Check them out. We do want to thank everyone for joining us today. If you enjoyed it, please share it out on your social networking. We'd love to have you do that. We'll look forward to the next Call to Coach, and with that, we'll say goodbye, everyone.